Hello, Dr. Maya Kinzigler of Monarch Family Chiropractic. Welcome to our workshop tonight. I know on the schedule was the topic was nutrition essentials, I believe. And we've done a couple workshops that we've recorded on nutrition essentials, and we kind of want to just change each of them in terms of content. And when it comes to nutrition, there's ample information that we could all cover. And so tonight is going to be different than anything we've covered previously, which is great. So I really titled it, Healthy Nutrition Means Healthy Body. And before we dive into that content, I first want to recognize all of you for joining me tonight. There's a lot of things that you could have been doing this Tuesday evening. And there's a lot of things that people choose to do outside of showing up for a workshop on health. And know that every time you hear a healthy message within the umbrella of your chiropractic care, it challenges you and holds you accountable to doing the most right thing for your health. And so we see that people who attend the workshops, they tend to improve 30 to 70% more compared to the people who don't. So it really is a big portion of your care. And so we really value those people who show up and are part of the conversation. Every time I do one of these workshops, really I do it a lot for me because it holds me accountable to doing what's most right for my health. And I think of my health in terms of not just now, but what is the trajectory I'm on? What does 10, 20, 30 years look like from now? So certainly nutrition is a big conversation. So let's just talk about this here. Let's go to this next slide. There we go. So this is back in 1936. I find this to be fascinating. This was found in a Senate document in Congress. It said 99% of the American people are deficient in minerals. And there's a marked deficiency in any one of the more important minerals actually results in disease, or a marked deficiency in any of the minerals can result in disease. Do you know that most of us today are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies which cannot be remedied until the depleted soils from which our foods came are brought into proper mineral balance? This is in 1936. Okay, we're going on, what, 75, 80 years later, and have our practices changed. With the 1940s, 1950s, World War II brought around a much more industrialized, agriculture and how we utilize the land and bring food to the people, right? There's definitely been a swing of, our grandparents used to grow and garden, raise chickens, knew how to can, and then with their kiddos and with us, we're don't know a lot of those things, right? Because we had grocery stores and canned foods came to be. So things really changed a lot since 1936, and this was a problem then. So let's look even more. So soil mineral depletion over 100 years, this was back in 1992, and looking at how the continents, percentage-wise, there's depletion in minerals, which is pretty significant. North America, 85%, South America, 76%. Australia's got it pretty good at 55%, but we're looking at a pretty significant depletion in what our soils and the nutrition of our soils and what that means when we grow our food, right? And what does that mean in terms of, the mineral content of vegetables and fruits between 1940 and 1991? You look at sodium, the vegetables of 27 varieties, there's, almost 50% less. Fruits, 29% less, meat, 30% less. You can look at all those stats. I don't need to go through all of them with you, but it is and seems pretty dire. This is back in 1991. We're another 30 years beyond that. And again, much of our practices haven't changed. In fact, we've introduced genetically modified foods to our farming practices. So we have seed that is not recognized in nature, circulating, and we use those seeds require a pesticide, Roundup, and the more you spray, I mean, it really requires more and more pesticide to grow these crops because you have resistance that takes place. Like, I bring this up because I want you to recognize that the food that our grandparents ate is very different than the food we eat today. An apple and an apple are not, unfortunately, the same. And so we need to be that much more cognizant and intentional around the foods that we're eating on a day-to-day basis to provide healthy nutrition to our bodies. And sometimes it does take some of these stats to help hold us accountable to those things. So let's understand our body a little bit. And I've got a handout that I'm going to reference here. But I want to just start with understanding our body and look at our vascular system, so our arteries. Okay, we've got our red blood cells circulating within all of our arteries, bringing nutrition to cells and organs, taking and removing toxins and things that have built up within the body. Okay, so if you look at that red blood cell, from an electromagnetic perspective, that blood cell has a negative charge on its outer surface. Okay, all red blood cells do. And then within, on the inside, it has a positive charge. That, you know, so what that means is negative ions are, what's the word I'm looking for? Repel each other. So if all red blood cells have a negative charge on the outside, then those red blood cells are going to repel each other. They're not going to clump together, get stuck together, and cause coagulation or, you know, lack of movement or stuck movement within our vascular system, which is really important, right? You look at strokes or you look at atherosclerosis, right? That is stuck red blood cells within our vasculature and can cause a big problem. It also indicates if you're not healthy movement of the red blood cells, then you're not getting oxygen to all areas of the body, and it impacts our energy, right? It reduces pretty significantly. So, think about that in terms of flow and movement within our red blood cells and how these cells should repel each other to help support healthy function of the vascular system. Well, and I'll bring up this point. It is critical to understand that the red blood cells should repel each other, because if that doesn't happen, they stick together. It gets viscous, really thick, and it becomes like sewage in your blood. And so when this takes place, you have a pretty unhealthy inside or internal environment. And then I want to go to your pH, right? So it's like going back to the days of chemistry here. But pH, the scale is 0 to 14. Anything, you know, below 7 is very acidic in nature. 7 is considered neutral, and then anything above 7 is alkaline. Okay. And the body needs to be at a pH between, it's actually a very small range, 7.35 to 7.45. Okay, so it should be more alkaline in nature. And you can see if it drops to 7, then it's considered a death state. Okay, so pH is really important in terms of retaining an alkaline environment. At 7.2, you're considered acidosis, and that's where we're going to discuss here in the next couple of minutes what acidosis is. But if you have, again, an internal environment that, if you look at those red blood cells, those negative ions are starting to clump together, and you don't have healthy movement of oxygen through the body, systems aren't able to filter out and get rid of toxins and all of those things. System's not able to function as it is, it shifts that pH balance to a more acid state, okay? Which can be a problem. And so, Now, keeping those two in mind, I want you to consider, Louis Pasteur talked about, the germ theory. If you have a germ, it causes, X. And what we're actually finding is the germ theory is flawed. I mean, you can, that's a big reason why chiropractic came to be. We had our founder, D.D. Palmer, he said, why do you have two people working in the same environment, who are eating the same food, sitting at the same table? One is sick and one is healthy, right? They're doing all the same things, exposed to the same stuff. Why are they expressing health differently? And I want to focus on the healthy person. Why are they healthy, right? Where medicine focuses on the sick person. Why are they sick? And so if the germ is present and the germ theory does, in fact, is proven to be true, and if the germ is present, then it should cause the disease. And we're actually finding that the germ is nothing, the environment is everything. So what is the health of the internal environment that allows for a germ to express very differently and cause a sick person to be sick? So we call it the biological terrain, okay? And the biological terrain is made of your digestive tract, your lymphatic system, your blood, your urinary tract system, and your intestinal fluids. So a lot of the eliminators of the body, right? Getting rid of excess stuff. And so you are inundated with viruses and bacteria and fungus all day long. And a lot of times we don't even experience or feel that it's going on because our immune system is handling it. Okay, it's really no problem. And we've got millions and millions, billions of microorganisms that are within our body. Majority of them, especially if you look at the gut, majority of the microorganisms within our body are really important for health and how we express health. But if our body is in a state of acidosis, when it's meant to be alkaline, so if it drops below that 7.35, that means we are predisposed to stress and we are predisposed to disease. So our body is designed to be alkaline, and the function of the body is meant to be acidic. Think about your stomach, right? As you eat food, your stomach pH is around 2. It's able to break down to allow for your body to absorb. It's allowing for metabolism to happen. So the body is designed to be alkaline, but the function is designed to be more acidic. So you can have all these processes happen. If there is an imbalance where your body is no longer alkaline, but shifts into an acidic state, that creates a lot of problems. Does that make sense? So let's talk about that a little bit more. I found these quotes to be interesting. What is killing us? It is an acidic, anaerobic environment, meaning lacking oxygen, that encourages the breeding of fungus, mold, bacteria, viruses, and disease. And in fact, there are leading biochemists and medical physiologists that recognize the acid-alkaline balance is vital to a balanced, healthy body. And there's even Dr. Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel Prize recipient, was the first one to show that cancer cells cannot survive in an alkaline environment, period. So again, if we're looking at the biological terrain, right, the health of the person internally, if you are diseased, we've got to look at, well, what's going on with the body? What's the state of the body internally that allows for cancer to flourish, that allows for a virus or a bacteria to flourish, right? And this is an interesting quote. There are no specific diseases, only specific disease conditions. And there's only one disease, and that is one disease of acidosis. So an internal, unhealthy environment that allows for the stuff to express itself, right? And we will always argue that the body does all things intelligently. There is a reason that cancer shows up, and it is like it's a survival mechanism for a very unhealthy internal state to, create a boundary around the bad stuff. Is it a problem? Is it? Yes. And, again, it's likely been an unhealthy state for decades. A lot of times we know if cancer is present, breast cancer, it's been around for 10 to 12 years before it's large enough for us to identify under a microscope. So what does this mean about nutrition? So I want to show this here because we just talked about acidosis, right? I want to look at this in terms of What is this telling about the internal state of a person when the leading cause of death in, Americans is heart disease? Okay. Every 40 seconds, someone has a heart attack. 1 in 4 deaths are attributed to heart disease. It costs us $219 billion every year. Well, this is 2014, 2015 for, remedying and addressing heart disease. And a lot of times the first symptom we get is a heart attack, and it kills most people, right? And we are a culture who is driven by how we feel. So if we believe that health is how we feel, and the leading cause of death is a heart attack, silent killer, it's the first symptom we get, how are we doing, right? Strokes, 5th leading cause of death. Someone has a stroke every 40 seconds. Stroke is very pertinent to the conversation around the red blood cells. Diabetes. Again, these are older stats. 7th leading cause of death. 9% of Americans have diabetes. This is back in 2015. Key risk factors: high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, overweight and being obese, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, and excessive alcohol use. Now, of those key risk factors, how many of those do you think are in acidosis state, or an acidic state within the body? High blood pressure, probably. High blood cholesterol, probably. Smoking, do you think that is an alkaline activity or acidic activity? It's really, yes, it's taking oxygen from our system, right? Diabetes is, a result of poor, mostly poor eating habits and a body inability to manage sugar levels. Sugar, acidic. So that leads to being overweight or obese. And then we've got an unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, and you think alcohol is acidic or alkaline? Acidic. Right. So we're not doing so well here. And so let me make sure. This is where I want to go first. Are you overly acidic? You can just look at these lifestyle markers. And if you answer yes to more than 5 of the following symptoms, it could indicate that your body is too acidic and you need more alkalinity. So I do not feel the best when I eat fast foods, fried foods, colas, or desserts. I do not feel my best when I eat red meat or red meat dishes. I do not tolerate acidic condiments like vinegar or red meat dishes. I regularly consume processed and refined foods that contain chemical additives. I consume breads, baked goods made with white flour and sugar. I eat very few fruits and vegetables. I don't drink more than 1 cup of coffee or tea a day. Or I drink more than 1 cup of coffee. I frequently take vitamin C, aspirin, or antibiotics. I do not tolerate alcohol. History of cigarette smoking. I travel by plane. So even in that list there, you can start to see or identify potentially acidic foods, which is the standard American diet, also called the SAD diet, right? We eat highly processed foods. As we go over this next handout that I gave to you, you can see, our food was engineered to create this masterpiece taste in our mouths, but it's not real food. So if you answered yes to 5 or more of these, then, you're probably having a level of acidosis in your body. So I love this survey. It is an old survey, but this just kind of is so reflective of consumption in America. This was the USDA survey. What do Americans spend their food dollars on? I mean, do you see a food in there?
No.
Yeah.
Technical mac and cheese, technically, but
Yeah, mac and cheese. And yet when you look at what's in that yellow orange powder, okay, you got some whey protein there, and I don't know, milk powder. Oh yeah, it's milk powder, not whey protein. Thank you. Okay, so we got Kraft macaroni and cheese, and we got Campbell's soup. Those are the 2 food products we have on there. Do you think that we're spending our food dollars differently now? Maybe we're smoking less. I don't know, that was big. And has our food quality changed a whole lot in 25 years? Yeah. I mean, we already know it's no bueno back, compared to where it was in 1936 and 1990, you know what it is. So this is what I wanted to look at in terms of nutrition. Anytime you're buying processed foods, just know that it is not a real food. It does not contain all the, nutrition and minerals and, components that make up that food to support your body nutritionally. If you are shopping, again, the biggest thing is shop on the outsides of the grocery store, because that's where you're getting all your real food, your fruits and vegetables and things. But if you're shopping with anything that has a bag or a label, just read the label. These are the top 10 food additives that, let's see, Food Matters put together. And they have really detrimental impacts on our health. So, if we just look at aspartame, and a lot of times these have different names assigned to them, which is frustrating. But aspartame, it's also known as E951. So doesn't that sound delicious? I'll take some E951, please. But this is a so-called diet or sugar-free product. It's found in jellos, desserts, sugar-free gum, drink mixes, tabletop sweeteners, cereal, breath mints, pudding, Kool-Aid, iced tea, chewable vitamins, toothpaste, cough syrup. It's found in a lot of things. And aspartame is known to, number one, be poison to your brain, and number two, cause cancer. Nothing that is, a neurotoxin that poisons your brain should be in our foods, right? High fructose corn syrup. So this is my challenge to you as we're going through these, is just pull out some of the food you have in your pantry and look at the ingredients. And if you don't recognize it, if you can't, pronounce it, then it's probably not good for you. And the biggest thing I would say is just frame it in your head. It's not food, it is poison. It is slowly poisoning you over time, period. Because if your body is in an acid state, then we know that you are not a balanced state. Your terrain is unhealthy to be able to adapt to and manage anything that you're exposed to, period. So just, frame that in your mind that it's poison. And then at least when you're choosing those, you can say, well, I know what it is and I'm choosing that. And really, I think the reality is that it's to be 100% compliant is unrealistic. And frankly, I think it's so unattainable that people will just say, oh, I can't do this. It's not for me. I'm just done. And so I would say the goal would be 80% of the time you're, trying to eat foods that are foods, the 80% of the time. So again, high fructose corn syrup. What's fascinating, I wish I had this book. It's called Metabolical, a play on the words diabolical. But it's looking at how the food industry and the pharmacological industry and our government have really partnered up to provide our food and our drugs. And it's, I don't know, it's actually really terrible to read and it's frustrating to read. But did you know that ketchup is a vegetable in our school lunches? It's a vegetable. Tomatoes aren't even a vegetable, they're a fruit. They're categorized as fruit. And if you look at your ketchup bottle, I think the first ingredient you're going to find is high fructose corn syrup. It is a filler and everything. How disappointing that the food we're feeding our children is, trying to support a industry that has big dollars. And that's the reality that we live in. And that's where I'm bringing this up to you today to just, I want you to have more intention when you're eating and when you're choosing the foods that you choose. And we go into a lot more details on those foods and other workshops. You know, and there's there's so much information on nutrition, but I think the biggest thing is 80% of your time, can you choose foods that are going to support a more alkaline state? And if you're eating a lot more fruits and vegetables and foods that are foods, you're supporting a more alkaline state. Again, here's continued, you know, of the top 10 trans fat, food dyes. I mean, this is just kills me when I think, why is blue 1, blue 2, red 40, why are those still in our foods? You know, cereal, candy, soft drinks. And you look at, I mean, a lot of concern comes with parents who have any kiddos on the spectrum, because some of these dyes really flare up the symptomatology of somebody who is ADD, ADHD, autistic. And so, you know, moms are, and I think, well, you know, what do kids love to look at? They look at colors and they look at cartoons, and that is, you know, they are marketing to our kiddos, you know? So again, here's the last of it: BHA, BHT, sulfur dioxide, potassium bromate. So go back to these, read these, but this is my challenge to you, is that look in your pantry and start reading the ingredients, and how can you get less ingredients? I mean, the goal would be probably 5 or less. Start simplifying the foods that you're feeding yourself. And an easy way to really test and see if you have, you know, acidosis is you can get litmus paper. Again, like a natural grocer, they have litmus paper, and you just test your saliva. Litmus paper, I believe, will go pink if it's acid, and it will go blue as if it's alkaline. But you can just test, and you can test it after you eat foods. If you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, salads, it'll oftentimes go alkaline. So, all right, so let's end here. And I will end with this, because food is so important, period, no questions. And I went over this conversation with somebody earlier today. In terms of restoring life, the fastest, you know, what is, first of all, what is necessary for life? If you take it away, you die. What is necessary? I heard oxygen. What else? Water. Okay, what else? Food. Anything else? Sleep. So, of those, how long can you live without sleep? Yeah, well, I mean, this is, I don't know if they actually have a gauge for this. They're seeing people in South Korea are dying from sleep deprivation. So they're working themselves to death. But typically it's taken months. I don't know what the gauge is, but you do need rest. Probably in those tortured, you know, scenarios, probably not too long. How long can you live without food?
2 weeks.
We'll say weeks, right? How long can you live without water? Days. Okay. How long can you live without air? Okay. Minutes, right? And so we got my categorize your vital needs. So I got nourishment on the bottom. So you got weeks. Got water second to that. I mean, if we come across a hiker who's passed out in the middle of the desert, are we going to say, here, we need to give you this organic granola, you know, bar, or are we going to give them water? Water. Right? We're like, we don't care. Let's give them water, because that's going to restore life the fastest. If somebody's like got a blocked airway, we're going to say, oh, you need some water. No, we're going to say, let's get some air in them, right? Well, there's something that we look at as the top in terms of essential to restore life the fastest. And we look at that as electrical impulse or nerve flow. Oops. You know, if you cut the brainstem, what happens to life? Instant. Right? So in terms of what is vital in terms of our needs, what will restore life the fastest or take life away, we look at the electrical impulse, because everything you do is better integrated. We see better breath, better oxygen exchange. We see a system that's better able to utilize water, and we see a system that's better able to utilize nutrition, right? So we will never argue that any of these are, you know, they are all important. But we see a lifetime of poor nutrition and eating habits. We see that breakdown happen over decades, right? That's how divine and amazing our body is. And yet we look at the hierarchy, and if people aren't getting chiropractic care, then they are not expressing their fullest potential. So that's where I will end. My ask is that you share what you know. A lot of people come to us because somebody that they trusted said, you need to go here. And that's where what you know and what you share is vital. And we appreciate that, because we really want to provide a place where people can be healthier, both in mind and in body, and improve their education. So thank you for being here. I've got these handouts if you want this, top 10 additives. And I look forward to hearing your takeaways when you're in the office next. So thank you, Dr. Maya Ziegler of Monarch Family Chiropractic. And let's go ahead and stop recording here.